at the Deerfield Caucus nominating committee. It's November 5th, and we're talking to Dan Shapiro.
Right.
And I want to thank you for your service on the Plan Commission, by the way. Appreciate that. If you want to take 10 to 15 minutes to talk about your qualifications.
Sure. First of all, I want to thank all of you for inviting me here. Last year, maybe the election cycle before that, I was very involved, as many of you know. And it's a great experience, and I appreciated during those cycles how important that this job is for our community. It's really one of the very few communities around where citizens like yourselves have an active role and input into our elected officials. So having gone through that and now kind of on the other side of the table, I want to thank you for your involvement and for taking this as seriously as you do. And I see a couple familiar faces, and it's good to see everyone again. I'm running for trustee this year for a number of reasons. One, for me, it's time. It's kind of my evolution. It's kind of my next step, if you will. Almost since we moved here to Deerfield 23 years ago, I've been involved in the community, whether it's coaching basketball or baseball or soccer or the comprehensive plan task force or the retail task force, plan commission, youth commission, Optimist Club for a brief period of time. And all those things I've enjoyed thoroughly, also on the Deerfield Park Foundation board. And it just seems to me, for this point in my life, our kids are a little bit older and one is out, it's kind of my next step. But it really isn't for me necessarily. It's something that I want to do to give back and to take a leadership position in the community. It seems to me that this committee has its very serious job of not say necessarily like doing a litmus test for issues, you know, like people would have for Supreme Court. That's not what I think your function is. I think your function is to look at candidates, and the three gentlemen, in addition to me, are terrific people. Character, integrity, passion, energy, judgment, common sense. And it seems to me that you look at the candidates with those things in mind. And I'd like to think I embody that. I always think of the phrase, and I try to kind of impart that upon my kids: say what you mean and mean what you say. And if you're going to say you're going to do something, you do it. And if you're going to do something, execute it, follow through. So, and that goes to kind of character integrity. So that's a little bit about me, my background. We've been here for 23 years, as I said. Our son is in college. Our daughter's a junior in Deerfield High School. And we've had the privilege of seeing them go through school, and just remarkable growth that we've seen in remarkable schools, parks. This whole community is terrific. The other qualities that I think I have that you might want to consider is that for most of my career, I've been involved with municipalities in one form or the other. So I'm a lawyer. I have been affiliated with law firms representing municipalities, so I know how they work. I've been to board meetings. I've sat on board meetings in a legal capacity. I've been before boards as a lawyer because I do a lot of land use currently. So I've been before plan commissions, CBA's boards, and I see how they work on that side. And so the perspective that I have, and the background and the breadth that I have in the scope is something that I feel very comfortable coming into this position, because I'd like to think I know how they make the sausage. You know, I know what boards are about, and I know how they react, and I know a little bit about the politics, especially in this wonderful town. We are really, really lucky. We have a tremendous community, 18,000 people. We have one of the best school systems in the state. Parks are great. The police are great. I mean, we have like no crime here. We're really fortunate. So if someone says to me, well, what are you running at? Right. We're doing pretty good. And that's a testament to our leaders now and to our community. There aren't really hard issues, there aren't really like difficult things that we have to get by now. But we always can get better. Individually, people can always get better. This community can always get better. And I'd like to kind of bring that spirit, that perspective, that freshness, if you will, that kind of new, just a new perspective, new set of eyes, ears, into the village board. Being on the Plan Commission for some years and the chairman for the last couple of years, I've had the experience and I think the ability to kind of consensus build, listen to people. We've had some controversial issues, and what I've always felt is when someone comes in to the Plan Commission and it's controversial, the manner in which you look at the issue, the manner in which you communicate the issue and educate is just as important as the final decision. So if people are given their right to object, to speak, to have their due process, and to respect that process is as important, I believe, as the ultimate decision. So we had people object to Freshtown. And we had people object to the tennis courts, the paddle courts across Waukegan. And not everyone's going to be happy. Everyone's going to live next to something that might offend them at some point in their life. But I think the process was true, and I think the integrity of the process was upheld. So they might be unhappy, but I think there's a respect for that. And with that, decisions that I could make may not always make people happy, but I think as long as people respect the decision and understand it, I think that's probably the best thing. There have been a couple wonderful projects that we have seen and we've approved through the Plan Commission over the years. Woodview, I call it the former Beth Orr site. Amley, now I know the parking garage kind of looks a little gigantic now, but I do think at the end of the day it's going to be a terrific project. And then, you know, there are other challenges that the Plan Commission in the village has. I think that the Deerbrook Mall is a challenge, and it has been for a couple of years, ever since Wonder went in and went out before anyone even knew it. And I think we might have some other challenges in trying to promote economic development. One of the things I've been fortunate to do as a land use attorney is to look at those issues on behalf of developers. So whether it be a business district, which I know has been kind of bounced around a little bit in terms of Deerbrook, or a special service area, or TIF. A lot of these things are very sophisticated, but they're things kind of in my wheelhouse that I'm familiar with that, you know, might come into play as we look to promoting and encouraging economic development in the village. One of the things that I did not articulate well in the application is how I would deal with staff if I were fortunate to be a trustee. And I say, leave them be. Let them do their job. They're hired, they're professionals, or they're hired for a particular reason, and that's to be, whether it's a planner or a public works director or the police chief. That's what they do. The village board acts as more of policymakers, and it should stay away from micromanaging staff. I think I kind of touched upon an overview. I hope I wasn't too long-winded. And again, thank you, and I look forward to any of the questions you might have.
Open it for questions.
I have a question. I was devastated when Portillo's decided not to.
You're not alone, Dorothy.
I said, oh, no.
Yeah, yeah.
What I want to know is, were the zoning restrictions too much? What could have been given to Portillo's to make it?
The zoning restrictions had, in my opinion, nothing to do with it, because we recommended them to the village board. We had a couple little issues on signage, but nothing that was gonna, cause them to go away. They were willing to compromise a little on signage, and as far as the board is concerned, we were willing to live with a little more signage than we normally see. From what I understand, it's site issues. Now, that could be anything. I'm not sure we're going to know anytime soon, but believe me, I would like those Italian beef sandwiches too. Site issues could be maybe the access for the cars, and I'm just speculating, I don't know. Maybe the access for the cars was not going to be right, because they were going to have 2 lanes, drive-through lanes, for as much as 40 stacked cars. That's a lot of cars. Maybe traffic was an issue. Site considerations could also include what's underneath the ground. Maybe they discovered something underneath the ground. So let's say it's a bad thing. Well, who's going to remediate it? And at whose cost? Now you got to redo the contract, and you lose a season out, construction season, because around Thanksgiving everything shuts down for construction season. Now you got to start in the spring. Does that now work with Portillo's? So it's complicated.
Yeah.
I understand that there's still talks trying to bring them back. I'd love to be a fly on the wall for those discussions, and I hope they come back. They were projected to have revenues of $10 million a year. 4% goes to 3 or 4% of that sales tax would go to the village. So it's $300,000 or $400,000 a year. Huge. That's a lot of hot dogs.
Yes.
So I'm as devastated as you are, and I don't know right now what it would take. My gut instinct, and I'm not privy to this, my gut instinct is now an issue between the seller and buyer to see whether the site issues can be dealt with.
I hope so.
Yeah, you and me both. Yeah.
I have a question. You seem a younger future trustee, one of the youngest of our candidates. Mr. Jester.
You're not close enough to me to see my gray hair.
I see 1 or 2.
Yeah, a couple things.
And Mr. Jester and the generation participated in the try to facilitate a hangout entertainment place for our young people in Deerfield, meaning the middle school, the high school. It's, according to me, it's a gap. We do cover our small children, babies, and growing children. We do cover the population that's older, but this developmental part of our young people, the developmental part of human beings, the young people, middle school and high school, nothing for them in Deerfield for hanging out, entertainment. I'm not talking about the activities through the park district or the center. They are very good.
Mm-hmm.
But something outside the high school.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Is there going to be another try in the near future
I don't
to
know.
establish something like that?
I don't know. I have a 17-year-old girl now
Yes.
here.
I have a
And-
girl who is out of the school system in Deerfield, but that was a problem then.
Yeah.
It seems it's a problem now. And I'm in the residential area in Deerfield that's very nice, but it's also getting younger. Why? There are younger families moving in, buying the properties, or renting. There are very few rental places there. So we will have more young people, which is a plus for a community like ours. So is there a possibility to renew any ideas, plans to facilitate a place like that for our young people in Deerfield? Would
So-
you consider it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as I said, my son's now in college. But what I didn't like hearing from him when he would come back always before curfew, is, well, I met some guys at McDonald's in the parking lot.
Or Walgreens, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great. You know, that's not where you want a central location for kids, especially when they're new drivers, especially when they're even teenagers. So I think it's something that would be welcome as far as I'm concerned. What that is and how we can accommodate that, I don't know. I mean, we have terrific space that maybe one day we utilize through the old Lindemans area, and maybe that can be a gathering area, but that's outside. There's a concern, do you want to have your kids outside at 10 or 11 o'clock at night when it's in October evening? I don't know, but there should be an
Well,
area.
sometimes they just want to hang out after movies.
At
So I'm talking
Northbrook
about
Court.
the space here
Yeah.
to go there,
And
hang out.
Walgreens, yeah.
Our Baker Square would allow that. The personnel would let them stay until
Mhm.
midnight while they
Mhm.
were cleaning, you know, and the kids just sat and talked.
So I think it's a point well taken. There are really two things that, you know, we can consider. One is a village initiative to do that. That becomes complicated. Space,
Yeah.
money, location, that kind of stuff. And the other is whether, it's a private initiative. If a landowner or developer wants to do something that within that would include an area for teens to hang out. That's, again, that has to come to the village rather than the village trying to create that.
Would you consider getting ideas from the young people in Deerfield, in middle school and high school? Like the teachers doing a program at schools and the students answering, what would you like to have?
I would love to.
Something like
And
that. Let's
just
see what they think first and then.
Just
maybe we can
as a quick
facilitate.
example, and I'm sorry if I cut you off, just as a quick example, I represent a park district some miles down the street. And about 6 months ago, kids got together and came to the meeting, and they said, we really need and want a skate park here. There's no skate park in that community. The board worked with the kids helped design, locate, everything. So the kids were part of the process. There's now a skate park in that park district.
And they use it all the time.
They do.
Even when it's very cold.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that.
Follow-up questions. What are your views on marijuana?
I was wondering when that was.
Forgot to ask Chester.
Medical marijuana.
Medical, well, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Because that's different than just regular
no,
marijuana.
I know.
Municipal.
Deerfield was being considered for a possible distribution point because it is such a well-established community.
Yeah. This is a tough one, and I'm not going to avoid an answer for you. But I will say it's a tough one because there are those who feel very passionately, and Commissioner Mary Oppenheim is one of them, that medical marijuana is important for those who are suffering from illnesses in communities such as Deerfield should show compassion. There are others who say, well, this could lead to problems, selling or people on the street who don't get it normally now have access, etc. My point of view is it's here. Medical marijuana is here for 4 years. It's recreational marijuana is legal in many states. It's highly regulated in the state. It's very, very difficult in terms of financial ability for anyone to open one because it's just really expensive. But it's here, and we need to deal with it. My preference would be to have pharmacists dispense medical marijuana, but they're not allowed to.
It's not a drug.
Right, they're not allowed to. I think that's a little wacky, but that would be my preference. From a zoning perspective, we looked at very closely various areas that would satisfy state statute and various concerns, and there are a couple, one near the Bertle Center, which is now going to be the Venue 1. And so, I'm not against it. I'm not against it. I think it's highly regulated. I think there's some argument to be made there that medical marijuana, on one hand, highly regulated in an area that's, with videos and security, et cetera. And then you have, I'm not going to pick on one, but you have pharmacies with OxyContin and, very, very potent drugs. And so it's hard for me to reconcile that.
What would be the advantage of having that in Deerfield?
I look at it differently. If someone wanted to come and seek if someone wanted a license for medical marijuana, first of all, the license is granted by the state. Second of all, the state, it's a point system. So there are so many considerations that are given through the points to an applicant. Just because you get zoning doesn't mean you're going to get one of the 60 or whatever licenses to operate medical marijuana. But if you don't get zoning, you won't get it. So is there an advantage to Deerfield? I'm not sure yes or no. I mean, I think we could do with it or do without it. But if someone wants to apply for it and they have enough points for the state to issue the license, they're entitled to do it.
So taxes, retail taxes,
Sales tax, I don't think it's going to be.
would that be?
I don't know. And then this whole industry is really strange. And I think it's just going to kind of resolve itself because on a federal level, it's illegal, right? So people are like, okay, well, how can I deposit my money in a bank? Banks won't take the money, or will they? No one's quite sure. So I've read articles where banks are kind of like doing a wink and a nod, saying that's fine. We're not going to, we're not going to consider it illegal money because it's from medical marijuana. But then how do you pay for it? And so there are a lot of little wrinkles that have to kind of shake out, and I don't really know where that's going to go. Hi.
Hi. I was curious, you answered one of the questions about, you said the village could get stronger with an additional focus towards diversification economically and socially.
Right, right.
Wondering if you could add a little more.
Sure. So, this village is so great, but what's kind of our makeup? What's our profile? We're 94% white. 45% of us earn $150,000 or more. That's our families. Our median age is 43. So we're a white, affluent community. Right. Nothing wrong with that. But I think we can grow stronger in a way that allows us to see more of others. Two of the things I was very, very proud of with the Emily and the Woodview is their workforce housing, their workforce apartments. So what does that mean? They're apartments that will fit the demographics of those maybe earning $70,000 to $80,000 to $100,000. The police officers, the firefighters, the school teachers. And that's a start to allow us to open up those sorts of living provisions or for people who aren't earning $200,000 or $300,000 or $400,000. And to allow those folks to live here and then maybe move up from the apartments to grow and get a house, and so that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Does that fall under the affordable housing?
No, it's
Or
not
that's still
affordable housing.
Not even considered that, still too high for that?
Right. It's workforce, and those apartments are pretty nice too.
But aren't you going to see some pretty extensive variances going forward between, you're seeing a lot of the small bungalows, and we're seeing a lot of teardowns again in the community. We're seeing a lot of the smaller homes, the bungalows, the affordable houses, houses under $300,000 getting torn down and flipped for, $900 million, $1.5 million. So there's at some point we're going to wind up perhaps like Wilmette, where I think there's maybe just 4 houses left that are under $500,000.
I don't agree with you.
Okay.
The building permits that have been issued are certainly more than what they were maybe 3 or 4 years ago, but they're not like they were in 06, 07.
Of course not.
And I'm not afraid, I don't say afraid, I'm not as concerned perhaps as you are that we're going to have an influx of tear downs, and then the $300,000 homes are now going to go up to $1 million. Especially because we have the beginnings of what I hope is a rent there, stay there, say, wave, starting with the Amley, starting with the Woodview. And those folks who are renting there, the teachers, police officers, etc., they don't go into $1 million homes. And so, yes, there's more activity because we're better off than we were in 08, 09, 10. But I don't see it as a huge tidal wave.
Speaking of diversity, I'd like to address the older adult population as far as working with maybe an organization like AERP or the Partnership of Sustainable Communities to look at the future plans of what we would do in Deerfield to make it more sustainable for older adults, for instance, with disabilities, or rezoning neighborhoods so that there would be different types of housing for older adults to move in or for multi-generations.
Zoning isn't based upon age. So what zoning is based upon density. So you might, and it's likely that certain residentially zoned districts, whether it be in R2, R3, R4, and the numbers mean more dense. Okay, so R1 is the least dense. Will provide for multiple family. Okay, and in many communities, zoning districts that provide for multiple family don't distinguish between, say, assisted living or nursing or stuff like that. I can't tell you exactly, I haven't studied the zoning ordinance, but I know they don't distinguish on age. If the zoning districts don't allow for multiple family in assisted, say assisted or memory care by right, then they allow in special uses, which is a zoning mechanism to allow it. So how do I know that? Well, I'm kind of in the business, and I work for a developer that does a lot of assisted and memory care. And what I'm seeing from him is a greater emphasis towards services. And that would be nice. You know, I haven't studied the market here in Deerfield in terms of the demand for that type of use, but what I do know, at least kind of seeing it in what I do, is that the services and the buildings for assisted care and memory care are terrific. And to me, that shows, at least for the developers who are doing that, more care.
Well, what about for the independent older adults? Like,
Independent living?
Yeah, well, for instance, you've got these, I'm just talking about like in neighborhoods where you've got individual homes. What if there's group living? Now I'm talking about assisted living. I'm just talking about housing where several different people live in a building together, or multi-generations live in that building together. Or, for instance, in a high-rise, or say Coromandel or something like that, offering services, being able to offer services to older adults who are living independently.
Okay, so there are two different things. One is group homes. A lot of communities have restrictions on the number of people, unrelated people, who can live under one roof, whether it's 8 or 10 as a group home. And you know, I don't know if that gets you where your concern is, but you have to consider those restrictions for group home. The other thing in terms of services, my parents are 90 and 86, and knock on wood, they're in good health. Right? I've always felt that it's important for my kids to get in front of them and see them, because we learn more from people who are older. And so I'd like to see more of that intergenerational sort of exchange. I'm not real familiar with the perhaps I should be, but I'm not real familiar with the programs from the senior center here. But I think intergenerational communication and exchanges is very, very important.
So is your answer, this is things that private companies or organizations have to do and present to the village, or is it something that the village could do proactively too?
Oh, I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's something that the village can look into. You know, maybe it's something where you have members of the senior community with a village liaison and maybe a staff person. And you get together a task force and you brainstorm and you say, how can the village be more helpful to our seniors and vice versa? How can our seniors help benefit the younger people? See what comes out of it.
The trend in housing in the United States, in the respect of that, is has been lately in building the homes that would house both families, the younger family and the parents. And it's hard to get such homes on the market, to buy them in the United States. If you,
Well, that's a very narrow market.
So, yeah, so would something like that be considered in our community? You know, in Europe,
Sure,
it's a
can it be
normal thing.
considered, but you have to have someone who's willing to build it and willing to sell it. And is there a market for it? And is there a room for it? You know, and, because we're pretty well built out. So, sure, it can be considered in kind of a, just
Brothers.
theoretically, but adding kind of doses of reality here and there may be more difficult.
You mentioned briefly at the beginning about Deerbrook Mall. Do you have any more specific ideas that you think you offer for that property?
I don't have any users in mind. I know that trustee Rob Nadler is really well connected to that world, and maybe he's working on that, and if he is, God bless him. But we have a big box, obviously. We have a sea of asphalt for parking. The sea of asphalt is more of a sea because we took down the health club. And we took down the health club so that, to accommodate the big box user. And I'm just making up words. This is not inside baseball or anything like that. If it's a Walmart or a Target or a Costco, whatever it is, a big box user is going to need that parking. Now, Deerbrook is complicated because you have Jewel there, who had a restriction on food, and also who had some corporate issues about buying and selling, and they'd like to move and like to get bigger and better. That store is an underperforming store. So now you have Jewel who'd like to move, and they got to deal with the landlord, where they're going to go, and then they have access. So it's a lot of moving parts. To entice developers, what I have done, what I have seen in my experience is communities offering to establish a TIF district. There are no active TIF districts right now in this village. A special service area, which is basically a tax on public improvements for users or owners of property within that area. So what are public improvements? It could be like parking lots or lighting, curb, gutter, stuff like that. Or a business district, which allows an imposition of an additional percent to help fund improvements. And that's usually then passed on. Some communities are loath to doing that because it's a tax increase, and some users don't want to do that because they might then tax themselves out of the market. These are different initiatives that maybe there's conversations about, I'm sure, with our staff. We have a great staff they've already talked about. They're brilliant staff. And it's a complicated issue. It really is. I'm sure we'll get done, though.
Who owns that property?
California Teachers Pension Fund?
There you go.
Which?
California Teachers Pension Fund, and they have a special company which represents them in dealing with the property.
Yeah, Mid-America or America.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Would you explain a little bit, you had mentioned here that you wanted to establish a business district in an area which could use a kickstart. Is that what you're talking about? Is
Yeah,
the-
that could be an example.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Other questions?
You've lived in the community for 23 years. Looking ahead, you had a wish list beyond Deerbrook, beyond Italian View. What would be that one thing
You had to ask me.
that you could change? One thing on your wish list that you would love to see in Deerbrook?
You had to ask me that.
It's your bucket list.
That's what it was. I'm not really prepared to answer that, but I'm going to give it a shot.
Okay.
And I'm going to go back to what I was talking about before, and that is we really, I mean, we have a great community. There are no major problems here. We have, well, you know the attributes, I don't have to tell you. I think I'd like to see a little more passion coming out of the community. I think sometimes people are not to say that we're not passionate, but sometimes people just feel like settled and an easy acceptance. I'm not like that. I don't like just settling. I like to keep pushing forward. So that comes kind of maybe from the ground up. So maybe that's it.
I have one more thing. I'm sorry, that would have been a great way to end, but I...
You had to ruin it, Jerry.
The
Thanks.
village does have a big problem. And I know friends of mine that we talk about all the time, is the streets.
Streets, right.
Streets are woefully behind in repair.
Right.
And I say that from my own experience of knowing that you have a budget. Budget talks on the village board take place almost half the time that you're a trustee during the year. They start, they end, and there's always the priority list of what's the worst streets, and let's fix those first.
Right.
So, but that's, the problem isn't the streets, the problem is the collection of funds to pay for the streets. So that gets back down to being an incoming trustee, perhaps, we'd be looking to you to look forward to try and pull in more revenue. And that's why we talk about disappointment about Portillo's. All right, that's a pretty good start. But your wish list, to me, should be revenue-based. As that's the worst part about where this village sits right now. It's not. All the rest of the things are all surrounding that.
From what I understand, in the next 3 years, there's going to be, the village is going to issue $10 million worth of bonds for street improvements and for infrastructure improvements over the course of 3 years. So it's not going to be 30 million. It's going to be 10 over the course of 3 years. Infrastructure and maintaining and keeping up infrastructure, Jerry, you're absolutely right. You got to keep it up. It's kind of like your house, right? If you have a bad roof, you got to fix it. It's just going to get worse. So the bond issue of $10 million will affect us as taxpayers. It's going to be about 127 additional dollars in taxes for a home worth $500,000. That's a lot of money. I know, and I don't sneeze at it or anything, but to me, it's a good investment. I'm willing to pay that $127, not $1,000, to make sure that our infrastructure is kept up.
Right, but now you're paying for the school districts, park districts have raised similarly, over the time. So my hope for you, and you don't necessarily have to address it, is
right.
The trick to being a trustee is being creative and pulling in more revenue from people that are not in the village.
Okay.
So my wish for that is, how would that go about? Rather than taxing the telecommunications, where people don't see it, but that gets raised, gasoline, sin tax type of things. The trustees, and it seems like that's been stagnant for a long time. It appears that way anyway. There needs to be more revenue pulled into the village, where we get that revenue from surrounding towns, or even state, that type of thing.
Okay.
Do you have a thought on?
I mean, I think you just said it, and I don't really have a thought about that, because I haven't thought about that out of the box like you're challenging me to do so now. And so that's something, we're thinking about, whether it's maybe leaning on our legislators a little bit to bring some money back into this area from Washington for street improvements. I don't know. Or grant money to the extent there's, that's a drop in the bucket, but every little bit helps.
No, there's a lot of
But that's
grants.
a good
The village
point.
gets a lot of grants,
Okay.
from state and from
Yeah.
federal, for streets especially. But what I'm thinking of is, well, I guess, maybe this isn't going to end up with the right forum for that. The challenge is to come up with outside ways to get more revenue to the town not from us.
I'm going to accept your challenge, but I don't know how to answer it right now.
Okay. Fair enough.
Kent Street, our village manager says that trustees should have these attributes. He or she should be ethical, respectful, collaborative, and thick-skinned. Can you give us some situations, perhaps, where you exhibited those traits either on the plan commission or your personal life? Something at all? Ethical, respectful, collaborative?
I'm very unethical,
Yeah.
so let's just start with that. The plan commission demands respect to and from people. When we have contested hearings, I will not allow people to boo or hiss or clap. It's disrespectful, or to interrupt others. That's disrespectful. In turn, it goes both ways. So, and I'd like to think that there's mutual respect given to the plan commission. Ethics, how could, your question to me is, lawyer, ethic, that's an oxymoron.
No, it's not. No, but that's what maybe people think.
You said that.
You said it.
Yeah, I've heard it before, really. My ethics are just about as pure as snuff. That's just how it is.
I wasn't challenging you, Rob.
No, I think those are great,
I'm just saying.
great attributes, and I agree with those attributes. What else is there?
Thick skin.
Thick skin, yeah. Because whether you're a plan commissioner or village trustee, or village manager, or mayor, there are going to be, or in a decision-making role, there are going to be people who don't agree with you. And that's just that's part of the program.
Does it bother you?
What bothers me is not that people disagree with me. What bothers me is that where people are over the top disagreeable. And that's just maybe my standard's too high, But I don't mind in personal or professional life disagreements. I think that's healthy. But when someone says, and you're this and you're that, or come on, we don't need that. And that should never happen. When I'm in court, a lot of people take it personally. They get all huffy and puffy. I don't. You do your job in the courtroom, you advocate, and then you go out and have a beer. It's not personal. It shouldn't be personal.
But you're dealing with people, sorry, but that gave me the thought that the people that you're dealing with here are not people that you would deal with in court. These are the people that are your constituents.
Of course.
So
and like I say, if I'm fortunate to be elected trustee, I would want to hear from people. I would listen to people. What will be upsetting is when they start doing personal attacks. I would never do personal attacks back, but I wouldn't engage you. I just would say, wait a minute, you're too angry, you're not thinking about this, I'm not going to engage you. And we can talk about this. Let's talk about it.
My thinking is thick skin means that after you endure that and you go home, are you somebody that you can just slap it off, or does that eat at you?
I find that the more emotional a person is, the easier it is for me to just kind of brush it off.
Any other questions? Thank you again very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.